Okay, looks like it's 7 o'clock, so I'm gonna cut the pre-recorded stuff. We're gonna run the intro, and Jamie, you'll mute your mic, and then we'll get started. Thanks for joining, guys. Here we go.
All I was paying attention to was the subject in front of me, usually a bird, and it was just all about photograph that bird, photograph that bird.
And the goal was to shoot it so that the head, the eye, the bill are all sharp, which this one is, and then I just wanted it to melt away after that.
Hey, and good morning or good afternoon. It's Scott, and I'm going to be joined today with another photographer, Jamin. He's going to join us later on the show. We're going to talk today about predictive behavior and how to use it in photography. And since I specialize in birds, most of what we do is going to be related to birds. Wanted to take a minute to talk about what we're going to go over, and basically we're going to talk about the four species I always talk about: songbirds, shorebirds, waterfowl, and raptors. And I'm going to take you through how I use behavior within a specific, either a specific species or kind of what I'm observing at the time, and how I use that to enhance or increase my odds of better photography. I will tell you up front, this is not a foolproof plan. I went out today and shot a little bit, and I promise you everything that I tried to do related to this topic did not work. So let's not waste any more time. We'll kind of get right into this topic about behavior. So I'm going to start with some images that I took earlier this year. And I did this in kind of groups. So basically you'll see the first set of images here. This is a palm warbler, all taken the same day: yellow-rumped warbler, another palm warbler, different one, and another yellow-rumped. And what you'll notice about all four of these images is they were all captured on the ground. The behavior that I was noticing in this area is in the early spring, these early migrants had come up, and the rain had hit the day before, and it was really overcast and wet. And I noticed that this flock of birds all went to this one area of the lake, and they were all on the ground, which was unusual. With that in mind, it kind of changed what I wanted to do the next day. My guess is that these birds were foraging because whatever insects were in the ground were drawn to the top. So by observing that behavior, I actually dressed differently. I put on some wet gear because I knew I'd be down on the ground. And I was able to get these unique looks. I mean, we normally see these birds perched in trees, but in this case, I was able to get them right along the ground. This sticks are actually on the ground. And then I got two more images in the same kind of vein, where I was laying on the shoreline, and the same birds that were foraging along the edge of the lake now were jumping up onto these branches to feed along the insects on the water. So again, there's a lot of ways that you can use these behaviors, and I'm going to try to run through, I probably have 10 or 15 examples here, and I tried to group them into sets. So this was the first set, and these were birds on the ground, but the behavior was watching them forage the day before and then coming up with the plan to go back. I'm going to run through another set of images. Again, these are all songbirds, and I'm going to show you that on these, the behavior was watching how they were feeding. And this actually helped me get a location that I've used several times. So when I went to this first location, I was looking at indigo bunting specifically. I had heard a couple in this area, and it's an area that I had worked a few times. And then what I observed is there's a field that's cut low and some trees that are high. And the high trees obviously don't do any good for photography, but what I noticed is they were bouncing down. So they were coming from the top trees down to the low field. And that's where I got all of these images. So the behavior of them jumping down into this low field led me to believe that maybe I could get some more. So first I captured the buntings. These are all taken in summer. Saw these field sparrows around the same time. There's a nice one. I really like this one, feeding into the, love how he's feeding into that. And then the next season, in the fall, I went back and I started to look at the migrants that were coming through. So here's an example of anticipating the same behavior with the migrants. So again, not choosing the high trees, trying to find areas where I could get eye level looks. And sure enough, all of the migrants were doing the same things. They would hang out in the high trees, but occasionally they would drop down into the field below and they would start to feed on the seeds that were down in there. So these kinglets are normally pretty tough to get. And generally, you don't get them at eye level. So I was really happy to get this at eye level. Got a palm warbler face to face, again, dropping down out of the trees down into the field. And this was a lifer. This was a Lincoln sparrow that I was also able to get, and really happy about that one. So I got a couple there to show you. Yeah, I really like these Lincolns. So again, the behavior that I observed was just combining the environment with what they were doing. So up in the trees, dropping down to a field, gave me an idea for a location. And so instead of just getting this one summer shot with these indigos, I was able to parlay it into a whole series. And I actually took about 30 shots or posted 30 images from the same field with a lot of different species. So I was really happy with what we did there. All right, more songbirds. So there's a set of prairie warblers. Now, prairie warblers typically like dense habitat. Thank you. Alejandra said she loved the field sparrow. Typically, prairie warblers like this kind of dense, thick habitat. And while they're not rare in Pennsylvania, it can provide a little bit of a challenge getting clean looks. So one of the things I had noticed, I was in this one area shooting sunrise, and it was a power line cut, which I've talked about before. And I noticed a pair of prairie warblers in a little bit different environment. So it was a little bit more open and everything was low. So knowing that this pair was there and seemed to be pretty reliable, I made a couple trips and saw them there every time. I kind of started to plan around a series to work with them. They were pretty comfortable, so there's some rocks that I could kind of hide in or bury myself in, and then they would just kind of pop around the same area. So seeing the patterns and where they were feeding was really, really helpful. The other thing I loved about this location is you're going to see a bunch of different looks. So this is a pine. So I was able to get, and these are all the same, either male or female of the same pair. Here's a real close look. This was probably at 5 feet away with my close focus setup. Same pair of birds, different perch. Another bird, different perch. Same pair, different perch. Again, same pair, back in the pines. And that all led me to this final shot. So I'm going to take you through the sequence. So earlier in the spring, I was shooting these guys. And knowing that they were reliable, I waited till the mountain laurel in that mountain started to blossom. And that's when I timed this visit the following month. So knowing that this pair was comfortable out in the open and had predictable behavior with where they were kind of following and the patterns that they were feeding in allowed me to just choose a location and go back to the exact same location and shoot this image, which was kind of like the final image of the set. I really like this image, by the way. So one of the things that I've done to try to tie in these predictive behaviors is once I get a reliable species or a reliable area to try to get some diversity, something I worked on this year was trying to get them into the blooming flowers. So whether it's April, May, June, we've got a set of flowers that come periodically, and you can time it so that different species will be there. I actually started a spreadsheet, so where I would have the species and when I first saw them each year, I added a whole column to when things started to bloom in that area so that I could hopefully in the years coming get more and more shots like this, whether it's rhododendron or mountain laurel or cherry blossoms, whatever it is. But some of these blossoming flowers add a lot of interest. All right, let's go. This is another series that I did. And again, it was noticing a trend in where these birds were perching. So this is a grasshopper sparrow, and I was actually there to observe a different species. I was looking for bobolink and dickcissel. But what I noticed is that these particular birds, there seemed to be 2 or 3 in this area, every time I went, they would perch on these taller, thicker weeds. I think this is called hollydock. Everything else was cut low, but occasionally these tall, kind of sturdy weeds would be there. And they really made for nice perches. The interesting thing was that they kept hitting the same area and the same perches. When they would go from the ground to go up to sing, they would always hit these perches. So it became pretty easy. I actually shot this from my car. I just parked along the side where I anticipated him to be, got there around 10-15 minutes before sunrise, and then I got all of these. And again, just kind of knowing and anticipating where they were going to be led me to this. So after I had gotten these front lit shots in the morning, and I was there for a solid week, I think I went for probably a week straight to get these. I thought, you know what, let me see if I can get the same perches backlit. So I went back to that location. I picked a day, obviously, where the sun would be clear, it wouldn't be overcast. And this, I think this plant is the exact same plant that he's on right here. So knowing that he's predictable and in the same area, noticing the behavior of that one particular bird or that pair of birds that was in that area, led me to get these two images. So this one, followed by this one. And again, this was a little bit of luck, just having them take off and getting it backlit. You could kind of see the iridescence showing through the wings. But I was really happy with these. It's something, I don't do a ton of backlit work, but I really was happy with the way these two came out. This was actually my vision. So this was exactly what I wanted in my head. And this isn't a thing about, artistic vision, but this was it. This is what I had planned. And I was really excited about that. All right. In the same field, let's see if I can zoom in on this a little bit. So in the same field, I had a dickcissel. This was actually the species that I was intending to photograph. And when I got to the field along this visit with the grasshopper sparrows, I noticed these dickcissel would sing up from the wire, and they were above a field of oats. They would drop down from that wire and do exactly what this bird was doing. It would drop down into the field, it would eat, and then it would go back up to the wire, sing, and then it would drop back down. Once it left the area, and once it left, I moved my car closer. So I was much further away, but I didn't want to spook the birds. So once they kind of went down, I parked right in front of this field. And dickcissels in this area are pretty tough birds. They're not common at all. So to get anything close in good light is pretty special. So this is the female. Then here's what I got with the male. Here he is perched up on a tall branch of oats all by himself with some really nice morning light. This light was literally just on the horizon, so it's soft. It's even got some red tones in there. And here he is feeding again. That's that same weed that was the grasshoppers were in. I think it's, again, if somebody knows better, I think it's called hollydock. And then I got this one, which I loved, and this is the dickcissel just with his beak right around the oats there. And here he is chomping. And these are not cropped. I shouldn't say not cropped. They're lightly cropped, but that's how close I was. And again, it was all just predicting where they were going and seeing the behavior. The one thing that is critical, and I've talked about it with Ray on the program before. The one thing that is just essential is knowing what your species' tendencies are. And it's not always going to be a perfect science, but it can greatly increase your chances of great pictures. Typically, if I'm going to shoot a species, I really want to observe it first. So seeing how these birds were dropping down really gave me 4 images that were the best I've ever had of these dickcissel. I'm going to kind of switch gears now, and we're going to go from summer into fall. I've got a series. I do a lot of this in the fall. I'm going to show you one specific species with a couple others tied in. There's going to be a lot of black-throated greens in here. And the behavior that I've noticed, and I've been going up to this ridge for years, but there's an area of the ridge that the birds migrate through, and it allows me the closest looks that I can get to warblers all year. Most of these pictures are taken inside of 10 feet. When I shoot fall warblers, I actually don't use a 500 millimeter. I'll use a 300 millimeter because I can get a much closer focus. So these are all taken between 6 and 10 feet for the most part. And the reason I chose these spots is I just noticed the tendencies of how these birds move through the ridge. almost all of these images are taken within 5 feet on different days. So I'm within a couple feet each time of where these images are taken. I actually have 2 spots that I use, but it's the same flight line. Just watching them bounce along the ridge over and over and over again just made me commit to going up there at a certain time every day right around sunrise and just waiting for them. And you can see how close these looks are. This is a style that I like a lot. A lot of people, these tight portraits are just kind of boring. But for me to get these really shallow depths of field with just the eye in focus and then the back of the bird is out of focus, that's a style that I love. So a lot of people would say this is like kind of my signature. And to be honest, I don't mind because I think they're really pretty. Here's one looking over his shoulder. So again, all different birds, all different days. Some of these were even taken in different years. Here's again that signature where the eye's really in focus. By the tail, you can't even see it. That's how out of focus it is. Settings wise, again, these are all shot at f4 because I put a teleconverter on. So the settings on these are varied, but they're all at f4. It does create a very tight window to get the eye in focus, but other than that, I really love this look. There's a golden crowned kinglet. I've shown this one a couple times because I just love this image. This is a blue-headed vireo. Again, same look, same ridge, same spot. Look at that beautiful red eye. Here's a black and white warbler, taken, I believe, on the same day as one of the black-throated greens. Oh, I'm sorry, taken at the same day as this. So this bird and this bird, 2 different species, shot from the exact same location, and both birds had to migrate right in front of me. There's nowhere for them to go. The edge of that is a cliff. So when they come across the ridge, they literally are either behind me, which is unfortunate, but if they're in front of me, there's nowhere else for them to go except about 10 feet away from me. And then there's that Blackburnian warbler. This was a new one for me. First time I ever photographed close. I've had some documentation shots. First time I ever posted a purple finch. An eruption year this year for these guys. So if you have your feeders out, keep looking. But purple finches, pine siskin. We're hearing a lot of reports of evening grosbeak in this area. So a really good year for them. But I was really fortunate. Not something I anticipated. This was a little later in the season. But again, taken this year. But really gorgeous backlight there. This was a surprise. We do get migrating hummingbirds through here, but again, knowing the behavior of the other birds, I was fortunate enough to get this one. This is not on a feeder. This is a natural environment. He literally stopped on the same branches that I photographed some of the other warbler on, and as soon as he lifted up, I was able to get this one image. I only got one shot of him that was in focus, and you could see the motion blur on the wings. I really like that, by the way, for hummingbirds, but the eye's real sharp there. And all of that led me to this. So the behavior of all of those other birds, and this was just luck, but this is a Townsend's warbler. Not the greatest photo I've ever taken of a warbler, but in the last 10 years, there's only been a handful of these birds reported in the state. And I think it was the only bird, the only Townsend's warbler reported in the state of Pennsylvania. I was able to get much better than documentation shots. Just luck, but again, the concept of finding the behavior, finding that area that birds like. And it's not just during fall. In spring, there are going to be hot spots. If you start to use eBird or you start to get out in the environment, you're going to find that there's just pockets that birds like for whatever reason, normally food. And sometimes the visibility to that, where you want to go as a photographer, is now they're here, but is it good photography? And as you can see with this location, not only do the birds come through, but they come through at eye level. So it really offers me some nice looks. So the challenge on these bird behavior for songbirds is really just finding those great looks. I think that's going to wrap up the section on songbirds. So I'm going to switch gears and talk about some shorebirds. And this is interesting. All of these pictures that I'm showing you, there's a lot of species here, by the way. Glossy ibis, willet, there's a tern, egret, more egret, more egret, more tricolored. All of these images were shot in 1 hour. All of them. Not that one. So all of these images, and I think I posted more images from this day than I've ever posted of anything in my life. And there's several that I left out of this sequence. But what got me to those images was knowing the timing of when these birds arrived. I've had people tell me they've shot this location or close to it, and there was absolutely nothing, and it was a ghost town. The key to this location was knowing that for whatever reason there's a window in early May, and they seem to fly in it before dawn or right at dawn, and then they fly out within 30 minutes. I don't know what it is about the location, whether it's feeding or maybe this as people arrive they just leave. But I was able to set up there on the ground before sunrise, and as I'm sitting there, the birds literally, as I hoped, just started piling in. And it wasn't like, again, it wasn't just one species. I mean, it was all of these species feeding in the same pool. And this one right here, I'm just going to pause for. This is actually one of my favorite images ever. I just absolutely love this. I love portraits, so I take no shame in posting a great portrait, and this is one that I really, really, really liked. I went back a couple times to this location. Both times had the same thing happen. The birds came in, stayed about an hour, which was perfect because it was in golden hour, and then both times they left. So the key behavior is really just knowing arrival. If you shoot this same location at sunset, which I've tried a couple times, there's nothing there. It was only in the morning, and it was only for that first hour. Not really, I don't know if these are technically considered a shorebird, but I lumped them in here. And I just wanted to go through this series pretty quickly. Sometimes we'll talk about behavior in an individual bird or kind of how they're behaving in that day. So one of the things that happened here is I was set up, I was actually with Mark, and I don't know if Nick's on, but Nick P is a good friend of ours as well. And we were shooting these skimmers, and the behavior was this, and it's not even feeding. I would consider it bathing, but they were going through the water, and they would just kind of stick their head down, splash water up over them, and it was really, really interesting to watch. So once I kind of saw how they were flying in the areas they were flying through, I was able to change my position to take advantage of it. So these three images were all taken from in the water. I was about waist deep in the waves, and predicting where they would go led me to this shot. So these I like. This one I loved, but what I hoped for, and the reason I got in the water, was to get this shot. Wasn't my most popular image of the year, but for me, this was the artistic vision that I had. You could see all the background is little bokeh everywhere in the background. All these specular highlights back here. I did get them to splash, which created this backlit splash here, and then there's water droplets all over. I wish I could blow this up. There's even some water droplets like running on the top of his head that are backlit. So again, seeing the predicted behavior, seeing that same pattern over and over again, rather than continuing to shoot from the shore and get the same shots, I just thought, you know what, let me see if I can get a better angle. They're going to keep doing the same thing, and they were very comfortable with all of us there, so it wasn't like we were disturbing what was happening. But just kind of seeing that pattern over and over again allowed me to make a decision to change my position and get the shots that I wanted there. All right, I want to talk a little bit more about shorebirds. So this is a really good example. It's not often that you'll get birds walking up to you and past you, but it's absolutely possible. This oyster catcher actually walked almost over me. You could see here, this isn't cropped, or if it is, it's cropped just a hair for composition. But what a great eyes-on look, and the bird's just coming right at me. Using the same theory as with the skimmers, when shorebirds are very, very predictable. So when they're moving in an area, they're going to go from left to right. And they tend to move as a flock or in a group in that same pattern. So it's really simple, and we'll talk about this with waterfowl as well. Just cut them off, get way ahead of them, don't let them see you, lay down on the ground, and just wait. Just be patient. The tough thing is, in the morning, the patience is very difficult when golden hour is trickling away, and you see that perfect light, and you want to take advantage of it. So the tendency is to want to chase that bird because the light's going to start to get harsh. But again, I'll show you a series of images that I got where the behavior just, you just saw the line that they were moving at. Here's a semi-palmated plover. It's a really interesting perspective because it looks like there's a sheet of water in front of him. He's in a pool, there's a pool in front of us, and then he's in another pool. And so this foreground is actually the pool that I'm laying in, and then he's feeding in the pool behind it. But it was kind of interesting to me. I liked that foreground element and how the picture broke up. But again, it was all done because I saw how they were moving and where they were going to. They were feeding in this pool, a couple of them earlier. So I just went over to the pool. They flushed, but I just went to the pool and waited. And sure enough, another group came up and jumped in there. Here's a sanderling from the same day. Same thing, just predicting the movement. I saw where they were headed. I got ahead of them. This one walked right in front of me. This one is barely cropped. And it also led to these images. Another plover, another plover. And seeing what they were doing is after they made a pass down to the beach, they would walk in front of me. A couple of them would pick up and fly back across over the water. And so I just waited. After I'd gotten a bunch of the shots in the water, I waited and I got this shot of one actually flying by that I really liked. So again, shorebirds, pretty easy. To me, shorebirds are the easiest species if you're patient. You can definitely start to see the tendencies in their movement. You can kind of predict where they're going to go, beat them to the spot. The key is just being extremely still and being very patient and waiting for them to come to you. You can get a lot of interesting stuff. Another interesting, and I got a couple here that are like feeding behaviors where you can see and anticipate what's going to happen. This will happen around certain times of the year. So you just have to kind of watch your calendars and know when the chicks are being hatched. And at that point, you know, they got to be fed. They can't feed themselves. So you can just kind of camp out and get interesting shots. The key is finding an area that gives you some accessibility. Most of these areas are roped off, and they should be. For the protection of the species. So these were taken from the other side of a roped off area, but both this one and this one, same thing. The behavior around that certain week or two is going to lead you to shots like this. If you show up early April, if you show up end of August, even if these birds are around, you're not going to get this behavior because it's either a courtship behavior like this one where they're fishing and kind of offering food, or it's a feeding behavior like this one, which only is going to occur when those chicks are around. And here's another one. I love that little guy. Just a couple shots I threw in of the chicks, again, knowing the time of the year and the behaviors that you can get. Look at this one. Again, knowing the time of the year, the behavior that's going to happen. And all of those... Oh, I think I got locked up here. All of those led me to another shot, which hopefully I can get to. All right, give me 1 second. I got hung up on something and I can't get rid of it. Let me see if I can open this again. I don't know if my computer locked up. Thanks for being patient. There we go. It led me to this series. So the behavior after I was there, looking at the time of the year and getting the bird, the piping plovers had a very specific behavior. And when they're young, they're seeking protection from the parent. So they'll go to the parent, they'll go away, they'll come back. So rather than chase the little birds around the beach, which isn't really a cool thing to do to begin with, these are all roped off areas. But we just kind of watched the parent, and it allowed me to get these two shots. This is actually probably my favorite shot of last year. Actually, I was invited to display this at a gallery this coming month, which was kind of excited. But it's a really neat shot, and it just shows this little baby walking away from the mom. The key, though, to get this shot wasn't following the baby around. It was just waiting patiently with the parent, either I don't know if it's the mom or the dad there, because they take turns. And being there long enough, on the ground, not seen as a threat, you could see both birds are real comfortable. This bird just walks right up to me, and it's kind of got that fierce look of determination in its eyes. Thing's probably like 2 days old. I'm going to go through another series now. We're going to switch gears. So that's shorebirds. We're going to get into waterfowl now. This series of images, I think there's about 5 or 6 here, was all taken from the exact same spot over a course of a couple days. And what I want to show you with this grouping here is how I got the spot. So again, we talk about specific behavior of specific birds, and sometimes we just talk about how does that behavior tie into an environment. So in this environment, I started shooting this location. I saw a good number of ducks over the last couple years, but I couldn't get a location that made sense. So by the time I got down to the shoreline, they would all flush. They'd never come back. They were on the far area. So I knew the ducks were there, but I just couldn't figure out how to photograph them. But what I noticed is that every now and then a group of them would move downstream from the larger pond to the smaller stream. And in that area is a small, it's almost like an island, but there's a little area of land that sticks out, and it creates that stream, that much smaller, tighter stream. So as I watched the ducks go back and forth, I thought, you know what, rather than try to shoot from this bigger lake, let me go down and get in the stream. And all of these images were taken by observing that behavior of the ducks floating up and down the stream. So I on these, I actually got waders and got in the water with them. Both Ray and I do that occasionally. Sometimes we'll shoot from the shore, sometimes we'll shoot in the water. But for this series, all of these were on different days, but taken in the water. And you could see the looks. I mean, these birds literally just swimming right in front of us. I do use a lot of camo for waterfowl. You don't have to, but it tends to increase your odds, especially if they're wild. All of these are wild. But just seeing and observing that behavior allowed me to pick a great spot. This is the same area. As I was shooting the waterfowl, I looked over and I observed this great blue heron. And the neat thing about this heron is as I started to go, I started to look for him. He was always on the same couple perches. So I waited on this perch. And it's like clockwork. You know, you just wait and you're patient, and all of a sudden, that's his fishing spot. I can tell you a couple species, I just start to learn these species more and more. Great blue herons, kingfishers, a lot of egrets. They'll tend to have these perches that they love to hunt or fish from. And if you see those over and over, especially when it's a great perch like this with some texture, I was able to get it in early November, so I got the nice fall background. I got that, and then here he's actually fishing. He's actually got the fish there. But again, just seeing the behavior. This is the same perch in a different part of the branch, so we went from one area to the other. But just camping out on him and waiting for something to happen. This next series actually is these three. Gets back to bird behavior and timing. So these are all taken. I took these with Ray last year, and the key to this was Ray understanding. He actually runs a workshop for this, by the way. So if anybody's interested, go over to Ray's Facebook or Instagram. He's got links to his accounts. But he runs a workshop for hooded warblers, and the key to this was him understanding their patterns. And he told me, Scott, if you're not here by this time, don't come. Like, just turn your car around and go home, because you won't be able to get them. Once they're on the water, because the leaves are on the side, you make a noise, they're going to flush, and once they flush, you're going to sit there for a couple hours and you'll lose the good light. So knowing when they fly in was critical, and it was like clockwork. He said, normally I think I'll just make up 7:15, but he said, set up at 6:45 before the sun comes up. Around 7:05, 7:10, they should fly in. And sure enough, we were sitting there. He was on one side of the lake and I was on the other, and they flew in like clockwork. So kind of understanding their patterns led to these images, and this was one of my favorites. This one did really well for me last year, just having that gorgeous red color. And we did time this. We've talked a little bit about timing it seasonally. Once you understand the behavior, and it's a predictable behavior, when do you maximize it? This same shot 3 weeks later, all that background would have been, there was one red tree remaining on the lake, and that would have all been the browns. So you see these browns off to the side. That would have been the entire lake had we gone back later. But yeah, just a really beautiful color on that merganser. But again, all came from understanding the behavior. And with waterfowl, the one thing I will tell you, and I tell this to everybody that I talked about waterfowl, you can't chase them. You have to set up and get there either before they fly in, Or one strategy you can use, and it's a strategy I used with both this one and this one, taken on the same day. But there was a large group of ducks in one area of this impoundment, and there's a cove around the corner. Had I gone down to where all the ducks were, likely they all flush. One of the tricks with waterfowl is the more ducks there are, the less likely you are to get good shots, because when one spooks, they all spook. So when you have fewer numbers, sometimes it's actually in your favor. But in this case, there was no way that I was going to get to the large number of ducks. So instead of going to them, I waited around the corner in a cove, and I had seen one or two drift off from that group and slowly make their way to another part of the impoundment. So I just waited in between where the ducks had gone and where the large group was. And sure enough, I had only a couple, but in photography, less sometimes is better in terms of numbers, because again, now I have an isolated subject. I got a nice clean background. There's nothing distracting. And having one duck there was less likelihood for him to flush. So I got this green teal, this green winged teal, and this northern shoveler there. In the same same park, in a different part of the lake, I was able to get these two shots. And this is just an interesting quick story, but this duck, I was shooting it. This was my favorite of the day. I was getting ready to leave, and I heard a large group of kids, and I knew they were going to ruin it. I mean, I knew they were going to flush the duck. They were coming through. It was a public park. But instead of leaving, I actually waited, because I knew that this would happen. Not my favorite shot in the world, but kind of a neat little takeoff shot. So as I heard those kids getting closer and closer, I just changed my camera settings. I raised the shutter speed a little bit and tried to get a takeoff shot. So I was fortunate enough that I got one takeoff shot, but again, kind of predicting what would happen as that group was coming. One of the things I want to talk about with waterfowl is diving ducks. So I've got a whole series here of diving ducks. This is a golden eye. I actually took this last month. This is one I took earlier this year, common loon. This is a horned grebe, another horned grebe. But these four pictures were all taken from the same lake, different days, but same strategy. So these are all diving ducks. So knowing the species will help you determine a strategy to get there. One of the things that I do before I approach the water is, as I'm pulling into the parking lot, I don't go, the edge of the water is fairly close to where you park at this park. And I know kind of where these birds like to hang out. Fortunately, several of them will come right up to the shoreline when there's nobody there first thing in the morning. As soon as people come up and there's cars coming in and out, they leave. I go there on overcast days normally, because it's less likely to have fishermen there. Like light drizzle is good for me. And instead of pulling into the parking lot, I'll actually pull at the very end of the parking lot and get my binoculars out and scan the lake. If I see one of these birds close to the edge of the lake, I stop there. I don't even pull into the parking lot. I was photographing one of the birds this day, and somebody pulled into the parking lot, a birder with a camera, and as I was approaching and setting up for this shot, she walked up to the edge of the lake, standing upright, pointed her camera, and the duck, by the time she got to the end of the lake, the duck was halfway in the middle of the lake. So I just, and I didn't have the heart to go out and say, hey, you just ruined my shot. Obviously, she didn't know any better, and that's one of the reasons I like to do stuff like this. I think it helps people. But you're not going to walk up to the edge of a lake and get a duck unless it's in a public park with ducks that are habituated, whatever the word is. But you're just not going to get them to cooperate. So with these diving ducks, all of these were taken with the same basic strategy. You wait for the duck to dive, and then you count in your head how long they're underwater. Loons can stay under for a long time. Golden eyes, it was the first time I've ever photographed them, so I wasn't sure how long they would be underwater. So I counted, and I waited to see, and then I left myself a buffer. Every time the duck dove, I would run, 5 seconds. I would stop, get on the ground, wait, duck would dive again, do it again. And I would just repeat it till I was on the edge of the water. Same strategy on all of these. This horned grebe, this one is barely cropped. I took it from a horizontal to a vertical composition, but that thing was 15 feet away from me. And had I just opened up the car door and walked, I would have never gotten this picture. So diving ducks, again, it's important to know what species are diving ducks, but the divers are really helpful and will allow you close looks if you understand their behavior. Here's some more common loons. This is a grebe. Again, that's another one that'll dive, and wanted to show this because after those dives, a lot of times you can just anticipate what's going to happen, and they got to shake off at some point. So you can get some neat shots like that. So I'm going to switch from waterfowl to raptors. I'm going to go through raptors pretty quick. Predictive behavior with raptors. I break it down basically just into locations, trying to find areas where they're going to come close. The reason I wanted to show you this one is close. This guy flew right over my head. The key to these, though, was understanding, these 3, 4. These sharp-shinned hawks will come closer in certain winds. So southwest winds on the ridge that I work in the fall brings them closer. On a northwest wind, I don't go anticipating sharp-shinned hawks. They're just not going to come in that close. So understanding not just the individual birds, but sometimes how the environment will affect behavior. I just love it. When I look for a forecast with southwest winds, I know that I'm going to get sharp-shinned hawks. I actually will take my 300 2.8 because they will come in extremely close, and it lets me get them in frame. The 500, sometimes I'll clip the wings. So if I'm at southwest winds, it will actually change the equipment that I choose. And I was able to get all those. And I wanted to show all of these birds just based off of behavior. These are all taken in the same area. I did a thing on raptors a couple weeks ago, and some of these were shown in there. But understanding the behavior of where these birds are going to perch really helped me get this series of images. So red-tail hawk, red-tail hawk, red-tail hawk. This one and this one are the same bird, and taken because the behavior was very predictable. So this bird will very comfortable with cars around. It will work a set of telephone wires, and it will hunt from there. Once I know that the bird is on those wires, I can go there. If I go there 5 times, at least half the time, 2 or 3 times, he's going to be sitting on those wires or a set of poles right next to that. Like I said, very comfortable with the car, so I can pull the car over. He doesn't flush. He's there all the time. But I know the fields that he likes to hunt in. So when I post pictures of red-tailed hawks, probably 50% of every red-tailed hawk photo I've posted is this individual bird that will do things like this. Once I know where he's going to hunt, it allows me an opportunity to get ahead of him and just wait either in the car or in the field. This one, he literally just grabbed this thing right in front of us and started tearing it apart. That led to this as well. Taken the same, probably a couple weeks later, when some snow was on the ground, so I timed a trip around that. He was up on the pole. He was looking to hunt. You can kind of tell they get itchy. And I just set up in front of him and waited and was able to get that. And then I want to show you this last one. Another good example of just predictive behavior, being patient, having a plan. This bird, these 2 images I shot, he was hunting along the side of a road, and the flight pattern was extremely predictable. So there's a very narrow stretch on the side of the road, and he was going up one side and coming down the other. But you can see from the light is a little bit on the wrong side. So the light's coming from the back side, and what I wanted to get was the light from the other side. But I'm on the road, and I can't get to the other side of them. So what I did is actually anticipated the flight, and I drove ahead of them. And I gunned it pretty good. So I tried to get about a half mile ahead of him. As he was coming, he didn't see me. I was too far ahead. He was focused on the hunting. I jumped out of the car. Then I got into the marsh where he was hunting. So the previous picture, I'm on one side of him. And on this picture, same bird, I'm now on the other side. So the road is to my right, and he is flying in between me and the road. And you can see where the sun's hitting him on the frontlit side. And then the same thing here. I was able to get the light on the other side. And then this is just my last image for raptors. I think it's the last of the set before I introduce Jamin. But predictive behavior with raptors, they have favorite perches. I saw this guy, he was on a sign. That's the perch he was using. I thought if I got too close, he would flush off the sign. So I waited from a distance. I got a couple shots at distance, not this one. When he jumped off the sign, presumably to go hunt in a field right below, I made a move and I got much closer, as close as I could get. There was a boundary set up, so it was a wildlife preserve. I got as close as I could get, and when he returned empty-handed, I was able to get this shot, anticipating that he would come right back to that same perch. There's a sign in here. I actually digitally removed the sign because this bird is too damn sexy for a man-made object, and that was the shot that I got. So hope you enjoyed that set. A little bit about predictive bird behavior, how you can anticipate. Every species is different, but you can start to learn either individual birds or tendencies within individual birds, or you could start to see behaviors in the environment. How do birds act in this environment? Whether it was those streams that I talked about for ducks, whether it was the mountain ridge that I talked about, or whether it was that field where I saw birds jumping from much higher trees down to perches that were eye level. So a lot of different examples in there. Hopefully you found that helpful. I am going to kick this off. I'm going to go back to this, and I'm going to introduce you. So Jamin, go ahead and unmute yourself if you are there. And I've got your Flickr page up. I'm going to ask Jamin just to tell us a little bit about himself. And what we're going to do with this segment is we're thinking about Ray and I are thinking about a segment where we do something like this. We introduce a concept, and then we have somebody come in and reinforce the concept to get an artist that we really like onto the show. We'll call it 10 minutes with 10 images. I don't know if we could really do it in 10 minutes, but we're going to give it a shot. So before we get started, Jamin, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thanks, Ray. Scott, excuse me.
That's okay. I don't get insulted.
Yeah, so I live in Alaska. I live in Eagle River, Alaska, which is just a little bit north of Anchorage. And this time of year, we get a lot of darkness. So it's a little depressing. You really got to hunt for your subjects here. And the hours, we get like 5 hours of daylight when there's no clouds, so. But I've been shooting for about 3 years now, and I started out as a birder, just got interested in birding, and I grew up out in the sticks, a couple hours north of here, and so I always kind of had that nature and stuff, kind of that interest in nature, and just growing up around all that stuff, and I just got interested in birds, and I joined this group on Facebook called Birds of Alaska, and I started seeing all these amazing photos from some guys, and I got the bug, I think I want to do that. And I've been an artist since I can remember picking up a pencil, so I guess my artistic nature is kind of taken over and kind of just turned towards photography. Okay. And so this is what I do now, and I love it. So I just can't get enough. I'm definitely addicted, and I'm always out if I can, I'm going to be outside taking photos of trying to find birds or wildlife. And I've really tried to expand lately and trying to get more wildlife, but birds are always going to be my passion. So they're number one.
Gotcha.
Just love the detail in the feathers and the behaviors, and just, they're just so many varieties, and, they're all just incredible. So that's a little bit about me. But I hope to get out and do some more. In fact, I just got back from a trip in Mexico. My wife and I went down there for about a week, and it was amazing. Lots of birds and lots of lifer birds, and had a great time. We had sun too, so that was amazing.
Awesome. All right, well, let me open up. My computer is just freezing on me. Hang on one second. I've got your page up. It's loading slow, and here's your wildlife inspired. I'm going to open up some of your images. So the first image I want you to talk about, we're going to try to get through 10 here, is a Pacific loon. This is stunning. Like, the light on this is amazing. Tell us the story and the behavior behind this one.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I'm a little ambitious. I've got 20 images in there, so we'll see if we can get through them. But this Pacific loon is on a local lake, and I've taken a couple of guys out there to photograph them. But there's a pair of them, and I first observed them 3 years ago. And there's this one spot on this lake where you can walk back to. You got to hike back into it, but there's one spot where you can lay down, and I usually take a tarp with me. Mm-hmm. and I lay on this tarp because it's just mossy, just spongy kind of wet marsh there. So you got to kind of lay down on this. But these loons will just, the pair of them will come up and just hang around for a little while, and just they'll go under, and then all of a sudden they'll pop up right in front of you.
Yeah.
And I shoot with a 200-500 lens, and I had a buddy of mine who has a 600 f4, and they were coming so close. His focus minimum is like 14 feet, so he was missing all these incredible shots. And I had to zoom way back into 200 millimeters for some of these, and it was just amazing because we're just watching them come so close to you, and then they'd go out again into the middle of the lake, and then they'd come back, and it was amazing just to watch them. But I've been watching them for the past 3 years, so I kind of get them, and I know their behavior.
Yep.
I know what to expect when I'm going to go out there, and it's been a real pleasure to go out and see them. And the past 2 years. The first year they had a chick, but the past 2 years there's been a lot of gulls on that lake.
Okay.
And I think that's affected them being able to have offspring, which is kind of a bummer. So
now, was the red-throated loon, I have that up now, was this the same lake and the same kind of behavior?
This is so this loon has been named Romeo by some of the local photographers, and it's the loneliest loon in Alaska. And it comes to so Lake Hood is the largest floatplane airport in the world, and this little loon will come out, and every summer it's there, and it's really weird because it's really acclimated to people. In fact, it's really tough to get a good shot of it, because as soon as it sees somebody come down to a dock or come down to the shore, it'll paddle over and just pull up right beside you almost. I mean, it's like a dog. You could pet this loon. And so it's really tough to get shots. You almost have to team up with somebody and be like, hey, you go down over there, the loon will come to you, and I'll set up here, And so so you kind of have to like plan it out how you're going to approach this loon, because he can be really tough to get a good shot of.
And tell me about this common loon in the fog. This is stunning.
Yeah. So this one, thank you. This was really cool because I actually had 2 experiences with this. And the first time that I went with a buddy of mine, and I was so low to the water that I think there was some heat coming off the water. So all my shots were ruined. They all had that like heat distortion coming, and so I was so excited, and I wasn't checking, checking back, and to see what I had gotten, and I just kept firing away. And anyway, I went back later and I was editing them, and I was like, oh man, every single one of these has heat distortion. So I was really bummed. And I was like, my one chance, so one morning I knew it was going to be clear. So I went out there just hoping for a redo. I mean, how many times do you get a redo on something?
Yep.
And anyway, so these loons were there, and the light started coming up. I had to get there about 3:30 because the sun comes up at 4. And the sun started coming out, and these birds were there, and they just were doing their stretching. And I just happened to remember, don't get so close to the water. I had to raise it up a little bit. But I ended up, getting a second chance with these birds. And I was just incredibly grateful for the chance to do that. But I'm going to check back next year, and I'm sure they're going to be there again. So I think they've got this lake staked out. So
nice. And one of the things that you mentioned, like with the perspective, and just as a general, the lower you are, the more the background you're going to get from the far shore on waterfowl. If the water isn't attractive, generally speaking, I like to go lower. When the water is beautiful and you can see like this gorgeous tone in the water, there's no reason not to go a little higher and include more of it, which is what you did here. Now, I know you were doing it for heat distortion, but yeah, it really created a beautiful scene. So really nicely done.
Thank you. And it's actually kind of funny because the next image,
I got it up now.
Yeah, I had taken some iPhone photos because those loons, they actually came up to us really close, and I didn't have my wide angle lens. And I had posted just my iPhone photo, and Ray commented on it, saying you should have taken out your wide angle and got some of that beautiful sunset, and I was like, shoot, I should have done that. So this time I actually took my wide angle lens and had it ready. Nice. And caught this image of these two, of the pair of them, coming with the sun just coming up. You can see it just starting to peek over those clouds right there. So
yeah, that's gorgeous.
So that was one of those opportunities where it's like, you kind of like, if I have that opportunity, you kind of know what they're going to do. And if the opportunity arises, you prepare for it.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. That is gorgeous. And the color in the clouds on the horizon, that purple shade that they have is really complements the birds and the scene. So that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Looks like we got some kind of a turn. I'm not good with the turns, so you're gonna
Yeah.
have to tell me.
Yep. We get Arctic terns up here. That's our most common. Occasionally, we get Caspian tern that'll come through, and some other places in the state we get some other species. But the most common up here is Arctic terns. And a buddy of mine, actually, I keep referring to a buddy of mine, but it's the same buddy who I go shoot with all the time. And we were at this estuary, and we were there to shoot red-winged blackbirds. But the blackbirds stopped responding. They kind of stuck into the grass, and the sky just started turning this purple and pink and just incredible colors. And we were watching these terns, and we'd watch them hunt, and they would just hunting into the orange sky. So we changed locations. We went over actually to where they were, and after just watching them do what they were doing, we were able to get some nice shots of the terns in the sunset. So that was a really nice opportunity that we took advantage of there.
And similar with I've got the pelican up now. I think this is more recent.
Yeah. This is from Mexico,
Okay.
and I was kind of had seen some pelican shots of pelicans in the sunset, and I have a bunch more pelicans in the sunset that some of them I haven't even processed yet. But one of my goals going down to Mexico was getting some pelicans flying into the sunset. So the first couple nights I was there, I would observe the pelicans and also the frigate birds and some other birds. They would migrate to this what they called Bird Island, and they'd all fly there to roost. And so I knew that, okay, I'm going to get a good chance of getting some of these birds, flying in the sunset. So it took a couple of days of scouting out the right area to photograph them and get them into the sun. But I finally, this one was actually flying around still hunting. It wasn't, or fishing, I should say. It wasn't ready to fly off to roost yet, but the sun was going down, and I had some really nice sky here. And I just saw this one individual flying around, and he would dive into the water and then fly back up, and then, do some of that here before it flew off into the sunset. But I really liked this image because I got some of that light on the back, and I got some of the water droplets that were coming off him, and I thought this one worked really well.
Awesome. Now we got a Pacific wren, right?
Yeah.
I was going to say
So,
winter wren, but I forget I forget where you're at. Okay.
yeah, I think they split them off a couple of years ago. But so this is an interesting one because every year about October, and this is since I started birding, I've seen Pacific wren in one particular spot that I usually go to. And so I've kind of learned that, I would say mid-October, that I need to go there and start listening for the wren. And they do this kind of agitated jit kind of thing. And so I kind of listen for that, and I stick around, and if I don't hear it, I'll just keep coming back until, and it's worked for the last 3 years. It's like clockwork. I know when these wrens are going to pop up, and they stay real low. They stay low in the thicket. So I know that if I sit on the side of the trail where they are, and they'll eventually just kind of come out, and after watching them, I kind of know where they're going to go and what they're going to do. So it's, you can kind of get in there. You just got to be patient though, and sometimes I run out of time. A lot of times I'll do this on my lunch break, and so I run out of time, and I'm like, shoot, I'll have to go back tomorrow.
It's interesting because you said the same spot. I would tell people that are starting, again, with bird photography, the better you are as a birder, the better you're going to be as a photographer. Learning calls and chip notes and things like that, and habitat. One of the things that's interesting, though, I can think of quite a few species. Again, that pair of prairie warblers that I showed a lot earlier. Same pair, I'm convinced, same pair every year, same spot. And they're the only two there. It's not like there's a group. A lot of times prairie warblers, there's an abundance of them in one area. But in this area, it seems to be those two. And there's some other warblers that I can think of that tend to come back to the exact same spot year after year after year. I photographed a hooded warbler, and it was banded. And I know the person that bands locally. And when I showed him the picture, he said, was it in this area? And he pinged a map and sent it to me. And I said, oh my God, how did you know? And he said, because the same bird, he banded it 3 years ago, has come back to the exact same tree for 3 years in a row that he was banding there. So it was pretty interesting.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yep.
I would definitely agree that being a birder, to start out being a birder, has definitely improved my photography. Had I gotten into photography first, I don't think I would have had, kind of that edge
Right.
to be able to get there. So
All right. Tell me about what is this? Swallows in the mud?
yeah, these little cliff swallows. I went up on the Denali Highway with some friends in June, well, mid-June, and we went up for a bunch of different birds, and it was like second spring up there. Like our spring had already like come, and it was almost like midsummer by that time, and we went up to the Denali Highway, and it was just like everything is just starting to bud, and birds are just starting to arrive, and so it was like, well, I get a second spring here, a second chance. And so anyway, so we're down at this, it's called the McLaren River, and I would watch these swallows come down and collect mud. So I had my tarp with me, and I had to kind of figure out where's the best place that I'm going to go, because it was right near the river, and so I figured out this little sandbar that I could kind of get down and lay on. And so I went there, and I laid down, and of course, I scattered them. I picked at a time when there wasn't as many down there, and then I kind of ran down and throw my tarp down and laid down, and then at that point, I'm kind of dressed in camo and stuff, so I'm kind of trying to hide myself a little bit more with like no bright clothing and that sort of thing. So I stayed there and laid down. It took probably 10 minutes for the birds to come back and like get more comfortable with me as just like, a log, right. Basically a log sitting on the beach. And then they started coming down and collecting mud again. And that was my goal, was to get them collecting mud. I wanted that mud in the bill, and just to get that behavior of them. Just they'd flap their wings and grab mud and then fly out. Another one would come down, and there was probably 100 of them down there. That's awesome. So that was my goal, was to get that.
I think you shared a lot of great pictures. This one really exemplifies that theme almost perfectly. Just seeing the behavior that they're doing, anticipating it, getting set up, and then getting a shot that really features that behavior. So, a cliff swallow up on a perch doing nothing, you'll see a lot of those, but you don't necessarily see a lot of eye level gathering, which I assume is their nesting material, that they're building those little I think they normally do it like under bridges sometimes up here, those kind of structures.
Under eaves and that sort of thing. Yep. Yeah, and that's what I really wanted. And I think you guys have talked about this before, but getting eye level, I think, really helps you connect with the species and kind of get on their, in their environment, with them.
Yeah, if you're standing up or even kneeling down and taking this picture, it does. The background's first of all going to be awful. I think it's just going to be a bunch of mud. Here it's so out of focus, you don't get that sense. I'm gonna finish on this one. I am gonna feature the rest of yours though. So let me come back to this one. This is the cormorant. I'm gonna just go through the gallery that you put here, because the images are all just so beautiful. I want everybody to get a chance to kind of look through here. There's some trumpeter swans, a northern shoveler takeoff. Really nice. This is a backlit. That's just a mallard, right?
Yeah, it's just a mallard. Yeah. Just 3-4 weeks ago.
Wow, beautiful. Looks like a widgeon here. Another real low perspective.
Yeah, and this is all from the exact same pond.
Yeah, I was going to say,
and it's like
the backgrounds look very similar.
Yeah, there's this really small pond, and so in early May, I'll just lay down on this old matted grass and just shoot these birds who are just coming like 20 feet away from me. They're just swimming here, and they're oblivious to me. So it's a really great opportunity.
Yeah, this wow, the detail on that teal. The 200 to 500, I will tell you, you lose that stop of light. Somebody asked about that lens. But man, is that thing sharp! And anybody that asks me about it, if they're looking to upgrade from their 70 to 300, or I'm like, it's pretty much a no-brainer. The 200 to 500 is just that sharp. The thing that, because I shoot a lot of low light, the stop of light kind of hurts. But man, that is gorgeous. Let me get back to this one. This is actually, so this one, I just got to say, like when Jamin posted this, I was like, wow, this dude's for real. Like, this is stunning. Like, the colors in the background kind of mimic the muted colors of the bird, and it's a species you don't see a lot of pictures of. And I friggin' love this. So we'll finish on this one, Jamin. Just tell us the story behind it, and
Cool.
then we'll log out.
Yeah, right on. Okay. Well, thank you. And this is this juvenile pelagic cormorant, and this was a rare species for us. They don't usually come north our way, and so one was spotted, and it was hung around for like 4 or 5 days. And the first time I saw it, it was way across this lake, and I didn't have time to get to it. So I kind of was like, all right, I think it's hanging out there. It had been reported over there like the day before. And so I was like, okay, I made a plan for myself and knew how to get across there. So the next day I went down and kind of saw it, and I was like, okay, it's here. So that's a good thing. And I knew there was this little kind of mini peninsula I could get out to, and there was some tall grass, so I thought I could hide out there. But the challenge was getting low enough to get the angle that I wanted. And so I got down there, and I was trying to crouch down, not to spook it, because it was sitting pretty close to shore. And all of a sudden, like I must have, I spooked it somehow, and it flew off to these ducks that were sitting more in the middle of the lake. And so I just waited. I was like, well, I'm here. There's nothing else around. I'm not just gonna, tuck my tail between my legs and go home. So I just kind of wait. I thought, well, maybe if it doesn't see me, it'll come back, because it seemed to be like it was hunting, or it was fishing. So I just decided to wait. And sure enough, eventually it swam back over, and there was like this little cove that I call Beaver Cove, because there's always beavers, splashing in there, and they have a little beaver lodge in there. And so anyway, so I waited, and I know you were talking about this earlier about the diving ducks going underwater, and this guy would go underneath the water. So I kind of timed it, as I was like, all right, he's going under for at least 30 seconds or so. So that's my time to move. And so that's what I did. I just waited for him to go underwater, and it took a little while to, every time he would come back up, I'd kind of have to freeze and
Mm-hmm.
wait for him to go back under. But anyway, eventually got into position to a point where I could awkwardly, I might add, get down to a position that I could get water level. And I think my neck hurt after this, because it was not a good position to be in. And I think I almost fell in the water, but it was worth it. Even if I would have got wet, it was worth it, because I really liked how this one turned out. And, just to get a species that we're not really, I don't really get to see that often, was really cool. And I think I was the only person who got a shot of this bird when it came through. So I was really happy about that.
That's awesome. Hey, listen, man. Thanks for jumping in tonight. It was a lot of fun having you.
Yeah,
Hopefully
thanks for having me.
maybe we can figure out another way to get you on in 2018. I will tell everybody that hung in. Well, we went a little over an hour, but Ray and I, contrary to the rumor out there, we did not break up. Just work in retail, and the only dates I took off in November, the only weekday was Wednesday. He had meetings every Wednesday in December. We just couldn't get together, so we have a plan to get back together in January, and we'll pick a topic. If you guys have any topics that you're interested in, leave them in the comments. I will say that Ray is going to be in Florida, so we may try to do something around his Florida trip, but he is fortunate enough to be able to take the entire month and go to Florida, so I kind of hate him for that. Other than that, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to jump back to Jamin's album just so you can kind of see the variety that he shared with us tonight. I'm also going to link in the comments at the when we post the replay of the video, I'll link all of Jamin's information. So his website, his Facebook, Flickr, anything that he's got going on, we'll get that out there so you guys can follow him as well. Great work, Jamin. Thanks for joining in tonight.
Well, yeah, thank you. Appreciate being invited on.
No problem. And with that, I will say goodnight to everyone. Hope you enjoyed the show,